I was up early, dressing quietly while Chandra still slept. All traces of the wedding had disappeared, and the house and courtyard were bare and unfamiliar. When I looked about for even the small comforts of my own home, a worn rug or a lumpy cushion, there were none to be seen. My sauce was scooping rice from a pan into a bowl. "Stir the rice while I take this to Hari," she said. "I could take it too." I paused. Husband was too serious a word, and it would have been unseemly of me to call him by his name. She gave me a sharp look. "I will see to Hari. Don't let the rice burn." Mr. Mehta, my sassour, left early in the day for the school where he taught. Chandra took the washing to the nearby river. Hari stayed in his room. I was left alone with Sauce, who found one task after another for me. I took the bowls to the well in the courtyard and scoured them with ashes and sand. I returned to scour them a second time when Sauce found a bit of stickiness on one of the bowls. "How were you brought up, girl?" she scolded, not even calling me by my name. I led the cow out to the field in the morning and brought her back in the afternoon for my Sauce to milk. But the cow was so thin, I could not see how there would be much milk. Late in the afternoon, Sauce went off to the village to get medicine for Hari, saying she could not trust a girl my age to get what she needed.
Stop and answer questions 1 and 2.
"You're not to bother Hari," she said as she left. "He needs his rest. I'll be gone only a short time." When I heard Hari cough, I knew he must be awake. It did not seem fair to keep a wife from her husband. Chandra was busy in the courtyard carrying water from the well to the small vegetable garden, where squashes and melons were creeping about, looking for room to grow. There was a mango tree with fragrant flowers in the courtyard. Though Chandra warned me not to, I gathered a handful of blossoms and took them to Hari's room. Hari was sitting up in bed. Sprinkled all around the bed were leaves from the healing neem tree. He was looking very pale, but he seemed pleased to see me. "I brought you these," I said, laying the blossoms on his bed. As my eyes grew accustomed to the dim room, I noticed with amazement that pinned onto the mud brick walls was an endless array of butterflies and bugs. There must have been 100 of them, all different. I walked about looking at the butterflies' bright colors and the bugs' strange shapes. "Where did they all come from?" I asked. Proudly, he said,
"They are my collection. When I was well, I gathered them. Since I've been sick, people bring them to me. I know the name of every one. If you see a bug or a butterfly, you must bring it to me."
"I could bring you bugs, though I don't like to pick them up, but I wouldn't want to stick butterflies to the wall."
You have to do what I tell you because you are my wife. And besides, I'm not well.
"Are you very sick?" He was holding one of the blossoms, touching the petals.
Yes.
He said. His voice was hoarse from coughing. He gave me a sulky look.
They shouldn't leave me alone with no one here to fetch me something if I need it.
He peered at me from under his long eyelashes. When I did not reply, he said,
"I heard the doctor say I will die."
"I don't believe you." My heart was pounding, though for I did believe him. Lying there in his bed without his wedding garments, he looked thin as a willow twig and very weak. I was sure he had a fever, for though the day was cool, his hair lay in damp curls on his forehead, and there was a red spot high on each cheek.
"They're going to take me to Varanasi,"
Hari said.
"They think bathing in the Ganges will make me well. I don't think anything will make me well." Stop. Then read questions 3 and 4 and answer them.
"How can you say that?" I asked. I felt myself trembling. How could he speak so calmly about his death? Hari went on.
"If I'm very lucky, I will die in Varanasi so that my ashes will be scattered over the holy Ganges River. Then my spirit will be free."
His whole body shook with coughing. "I'll be right back," I said, and fled the room. Part of me wanted to escape Hari's shocking words, and part of me wanted to find a way to help him. I remembered how my ma had given me honey and ginger when I had a bad cold. I found a ginger root to grate. I had to stick my fingers in several jars before I discovered the honey. It was hidden away in the back of the cupboard. Hari took 3 spoonfuls of the honey and ginger. After a few minutes, when the coughs grew fewer, he smiled at me.
Tell me about your home,
he ordered. It seemed that all his requests were my commands. I brought my quilt, climbing on Hari's bed, the better to show it to him. This is my ma and Bop and my brothers and our cow, which we had to sell so I could marry you. This is our marketplace where my Bop has a saw to write letters. I showed him the spice merchants and the vegetable stalls and the man with basket of cobras. I was so lost in amusing Hari with the pictures on my quilt. I didn't hear his ma come into the room. "What are you doing here, girl? Get off Hari's bed. Why have you stolen the honey?" She flung the quilt at me and snatched the blossoms from the bed. "You have torn the mango flowers from the tree." While I stood there trembling, she counted the blossoms. "There are 6 of them, 6 blossoms that will never be fruit. You have robbed us of 6 mangoes. I will remember that when we share our fruit." Hari gave his ma a sullen look.
Coley brought the flowers to cheer me. No one else has brought flowers. She was telling me stories of her home, and she gave the honey to me for my cough. It made it better.
Hari's ma looked closely at him. "I doubt it is the honey, but I can give it to you as well as she can." She turned to me. "Leave the boy now. He needs rest. You can make the fire for our dinner." Her voice was not so angry. She could see for herself that Hari was coughing less.
Stop and answer questions number 5 and question number 6.
I found Hari's sister Chandra soaking the lentils for dinner. "Chandra," I whispered, hardly daring to speak the terrible words aloud. "Is it true? Hari is going to die?" She answered in an even quieter whisper. "It's what the doctor warns us of. There is no medicine that can cure him." There were tears in her sad eyes. "It's why Ma and Bop are taking him to Varanasi. They hope the Ganges will make him better. Will you and I go to Varanasi too?" I'd heard of the holy city all of my life. It would be a great thing to see, but after I asked, I was ashamed to think I wanted pleasure from an unhappy trip. "No, only Ma and Bop will go. They have friends to stay with, but the railway fare is expensive." "Chandra, I don't understand why they let Hari get married to me when he was so sick. Why did they lie to my parents about his age? Hari can't be 16. Chandra looked over her shoulder to be sure we were alone. In a voice so quiet I had to lean close to her to hear, she said, "My parents needed money for the doctor and money to take Hari to Varanasi. They believe the Ganges is his last hope. A dowry was the only way they could get the money. It was not I who was wanted at all. It was the money." I felt as if I were tangled like a small fly in the web of a cunning spider. If Hari died, what would become of me? I would be a widow whom no one would want. I had been told stories of terrible days long ago when widows were thrown on the burning funeral pyres of their husbands. I couldn't imagine that Sauce would do such a thing, but the thought made me shiver. I was very angry at the Metas, but after listening all day to Hari's terrible coughing, I began to think that if the Ganges could cure Hari, our wedding would not be such a bad thing.
Stop and answer questions 7 and 8. Then press play and continue with the recording.
That evening, when Hari's Bop returned home, there was a terrible quarrel in Hari's room. I heard Hari's voice, and then his ma's and his Bop's. Everyone was shouting. When Hari began coughing, his ma began to cry. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. I jumped. "What was that?" I asked Chandra. "It's only Hari throwing something. He always does that when he doesn't get his way." "Do your parents allow such behavior?" "They never scold him. They let him have his way because he is their only son, and he is so sick." We could hear the angry voices through the thin walls. "Hari, listen to reason," his ma said. "She would only be in the way, and we cannot afford it."
I won't go without her.
Hari shouted in a hoarse voice.
She's my wife now. It's her money that is taking us.
Hari's bop tried to quiet his wife.
All this arguing is very bad for Hari. It must stop. We can take a child's pass on the railway for the girl, and she won't eat much. Tell her to come and see me.
Hari said. Hari's ma sounded tired. You've had your way. That's enough. Now you must rest.
I want to see her.
There was another crash. A moment later, Hari's ma stood beside me. Go to your husband, she said in a cross voice. He was sitting up in bed, the 2 spots on his cheeks redder than ever. He had a sly look on his face.
I fixed it so that you could come with us,
he said.
You must tell me more stories about your village and the people who live there. You must obey me.
I wanted to tell him that he was only my age and in bed besides. I did not see how he could make me do something unless I wanted to. But I was grateful to him for making his parents take me to Varanasi. Besides, I was afraid that if I answered him back, Hari would start coughing or throw something. I settled cross-legged on the floor beside his charpoy and began the story of the man who came to ask my bop to write to the government because the government's train killed his cow. As everyone knows, cows are sacred to Hindus, so it was a serious thing. The man was upset. Letters went back and forth. After many weeks, the government sent a letter saying they must have proof that the cow had been killed. The man said he would send the cow's bones. The government said, how could they tell whose bones the cows were? The bones of someone else's cow might be sent. The man was so angry with the government for doubting his honesty that he wouldn't send them any more letters. 2 years later, a man from the government came to the village, bringing a fine cow for the man. But the man said the government had insulted him and he refused to take the cow. Hari laughed at the story, that his coughing became worse, and his ma sent me angrily from the room. Later in the day, a doctor came. After he examined Hari, he stood in the courtyard with Hari's ma and bop. I crept close to listen.
Do as you like,
the doctor said.
But if it were my son, I would not subject him to such a journey.
The doctor's voice was very solemn.
I cannot hold out much hope for him. His tuberculosis is of a new kind that does not respond to medication. Still, with complete rest, he may have weeks, perhaps months, to live.
After the doctor left, Hari's ma asked in an impatient voice, Are we to listen to such a man when the waters of the Ganges rivers are waiting? Hari's bop said,
The doctor is a learned man. He must know of what he speaks.
He may be learned about his medicine, but what does he know about the healing powers of the Ganges? As in everything, Hari's bop allowed his wife to make the decision. That night, the Bhagat, the local healer, came and chanted over Hari while brushing him with the leaves of a neem tree to give him strength for our trip to Varanasi the following morning.